Hello, I am Christopher Scott Wyatt, host of the Autistic Me podcast. The following episode of the Autistic Me was recorded during a difficult time for our family. My wife had to be in California to help her family, while I remained in Texas with our two daughters. The sound quality isn't great, and there are some interruptions during the recording session. I didn't reschedule this interview because my daughters and I really enjoyed screening the new feature film, Tyson's Run, written and directed by Kim Bass. Promoting this film and other positive depictions of autistic people is why I blog and host the podcast. When the film's star, Major Dodson, agreed to appear on the podcast along with Kim Bass, I was thrilled. Major is a talented actor and inspiring autistic role model. While we watched Tyson's Run, my daughter Lee kept pointing out when she recognized her autistic traits in the character of Tyson. I wanted to thank Major personally for what he had accomplished as an actor. The theatrical release of Tyson's Run was rescheduled from March 4th to March 11th, 2022. Please look for screenings in your city and consider supporting this family-friendly film. Again, my sincerest thanks to Kim Bass and Major Dodson for their patience while we recorded this episode of the Autistic Me podcast. To Kim, Major, and the entire cast and crew of Tyson's Run, my daughters also say thank you for this film. Hello and welcome to the Autistic Me podcast. I am Christopher Scott Wyatt, speaking as the Autistic Me. Since 2010, there have been at least 36 significant autistic characters in feature films and 46 autistic characters in literary fiction. And of course, we've also seen more autistics on television series. The Good Doctor, Atypical, and Amazon's new series, As We See It, are just 3 quick examples of series with autistic lead characters. Today, we will be discussing the new feature film, Tyson's Run, with writer-director Kim Bass and the film's star, Major Dodson. Tyson's Run follows 15-year-old autistic Tyson Hollerman as he attends public school for the first time. While helping his father, the school's head football coach, clean up during the team's practice, Tyson befriends champion marathon runner Aklilu. Tyson becomes determined to run his first marathon in hopes of winning his father's approval. Tyson's Run will open in theaters nationwide on March 4th, 2022. It is an honor to welcome writer-director Kim Bass and actor Major Dodson to the Autistic Me podcast.
And it is an honor to be here. You're a very good interviewer.
It's a real pleasure to be here to speak about something that's very special to us, and we're looking forward to the interview.
Well, Kim, if I may, I'd like to share with our audience a little bit about your background.
Okay, don't embarrass me.
Well, Kim Bass is an Emmy-nominated writer known for his work on In Living Color, Sister, Sister, and the Nickelodeon sitcom Kenan and Kel. During his over 25-year career, Bass has worked as a writer for most of the major Hollywood studios and television networks, as well as many independent film and television production companies. Currently, Bass is in post-production on his latest film, Head Shop, and in pre-production for the faith-based Christian film, Mother Johnson's Miracle Christmas. Kim, it is an honor to have you on this podcast. Thank you.
Well, the pleasure is completely mine. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I will also say a few words there about Major. Major stars as Tyson Hollerman in Tyson's Run. Major is probably best known for his role as Sam Anderson on AMC's The Walking Dead.
Yes.
Major's, what's that?
I said, yes. That was
The Walking Dead. You vaguely remember this.
Oh, that was a big portion of my life for quite a while. I mean, a lot of good memories there.
Well, Major was Sam Anderson on The Walking Dead. His other projects include Left Behind, American Horror Story, and Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an honor to have you both. I'm going to go back and forth here, and maybe you two both jump in. The first question I have really goes to both of you, and that's why was this project so important to each of you individually? Kim, why did you write this and want to make this film?
Well, I think that it was important to tell a story about inclusion, about acceptance, and about allowing those who are perceived to be different to flourish, to blossom, to be able to have their own path and walk it without any judgment and without any barriers being put in their way based upon sort of perceived difficulties that they might have. And I think it was important. And I had an occasion where a young boy at a particular elementary school decided that he didn't want to run with the other little boys anymore because the other boys, as it was said to me, are super fast and he couldn't keep up and therefore just decided not to run at all. And so that was certainly an inspirational nugget. But then looking at things that were happening in society where folks literally have to march for their rights and try to be included in things that people think they should be excluded from just because, as I said, they are perceived to be different. So I just was inspired to write this particular story and then to use the sort of vehicle of people being on the spectrum as the mechanism by which I could tell this particular story about allowing everyone to flourish and everyone to be able to fly as high as their given gifts will allow them to fly.
Major, what attracted you to this project?
Well, I had never really acted in anything of that caliber before. When you get an audition like this, it's a challenge coming up with this character. Thinking of how to do him in a respectful and tasteful way. Because as we talked before, there were so many negative interpretations of autistic characters before, leading up to now. And as things are becoming more inclusive and better recognized, I thought it would be a cool opportunity, and I got it, and it's turned out to be really, really good so far. So I'm really happy with how things are turning out. It was just a big opportunity.
As someone on the spectrum who loves film and stage, I found myself writing and doing technical work because acting intimidates me. You are on the spectrum, and you are the star of this film. How did that influence your decision to make the role and your portrayal of Tyson?
Well, a lot of Tyson's difficulties, like the challenges that he faces in day-to-day life, revolve around being unsure how to approach things, that lack of experience. And for the longest time, I was kind of exemplifying that. I had a rough time making friends in school. I had a rough time getting over anxieties that revolved around, performing, memorizing things. It's sort of a miracle, that I've met the people that I've met, that I've gotten to the point that I am now. It's taken a lot of practice. So without that prior experience, that help over the years, there was no way I could have been working these long hours on set, doing stunts, running in the rain, all of these things. Like, it is just a miracle that I've gotten to where I am now.
Kim, the story is really about relationships. It's about family, especially within the Hollerman family. You have Rory Cochran and Amy Smart as Bobby and Eloise, and they really go through things that my wife and I go through as parents of neurodiverse children. What was it like working with such talented actors on those very difficult moments?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. Talented actors. We were really fortunate to have the ensemble cast that we were able to put together. You mentioned Rory. Rory's a fantastic actor, and Amy as well. But everyone was, so supportive. We had Reno Wilson, we had Barkad Abdi, Claudia Zavayos, and Layla Felder. Everyone came together because they believed in the story, they believed in the script, and then all the actors embraced their characters and what they were bringing, basically to this party, and to celebrate diversity, to celebrate, differences in people, and to lift them up. So that part, it wasn't a challenge at all to work with those actors. It was a pure joy, and we all felt we were doing a story that was meaningful and something that I dare say necessary to bring light to certain things that people like to keep in dark corners. Mm-hmm. And so it was a pure joy. It was just a lot of fun, and Major, I believe, if I can speak for Major, felt comfortable and felt surrounded by those who not only cared about the story and his character, but cared about him as a person.
Right.
And it was important for my family to see this film together. Listeners to the podcast and readers of the blog know that Anne and Lee are neurodiverse. And as we watched this film, Lee, who is the 9-year-old, was recognizing herself so much in Tyson, from the way that you were eating at the table with the family to how she refers to the family members. All of this was done with such care and accuracy that we don't always see in these films. It's not often that my daughter looks at a film and says, "Wow, he's a lot like me, Dad."
Wow.
Tyson is authentic. Hearing that, Major, from a parent and my, obviously my autistic daughter, how does that feel?
Oh man, it's one of the best things to hear, because that was a huge fear for me. I have issues with anxiety, and while I was preparing the character of Tyson and going through these mannerisms, these attitudes that he has towards things, just developing Tyson as a person. I mean, if I'm honest, I was terrified for the longest time of what's going to happen if it's not an accurate portrayal. What if it's an insult? It wouldn't come off well for the movie, for the people around me. So I was scared about that. But hearing these parents and these children and these people saying all these positive things, your kid saw herself in Tyson, like, that is just incredibly heartwarming, and it makes me feel so much better about everything. It just makes me happy to hear that people are relating to him and enjoying what they saw.
And Kim, this wasn't it's not always a happy film. There are challenges that the parents face. And as you said, you just had this excellent cast capturing those parental moments. In particular, though, there's a lot of tension that is sensed between Coach Hollerman and Tyson. And it's done without words always. Rory is very good at giving expressions and looking aside. So, Kim, could you comment on what those scenes were like between these two very talented actors?
Sure. So when good actors, talented actors, become the characters, then many of the mannerisms, the tension is actually organic. It's very natural, because, of course, Major literally morphs into Tyson, and then Rory becomes this father who has his own issues because his own life has been unfulfilled. His own dreams were not fulfilled. And he feels that he's robbed of the opportunity to even live vicariously through his son, because his son, didn't fit the mold, So that he thought, the mold that he thought he should be. So because he became that character, it's natural for him to sort of have this distance. It's natural for him to feel that he's been served a bad hand, right? He's got his own sort of demons, but he is a dad, but he's failing a bit because he's not fulfilled. He feels that he didn't get what he deserved, and he has now a son who he feels won't get anything that he as a father wants for him. So I think some of the tension that you're feeling is absolutely natural for a father to feel that way. Not that a father should, but we should understand that he could feel that way, and he doesn't know how to be as doting on his son as his wife is, who just pure love for the child, but maybe coddles him a bit too much. So he's got this veneer of being this perfect coach with a team that has a perfect record and has had for many years. And then the way he looks at himself, I'm imperfect, and perhaps the son I created is imperfect. And so how does he square that with himself? And I think that because the actor believes that, then the tension and this sort of darkness that just sort of percolates under the surface is there, even though they're pretending to be this perfect family. So going through the motions, so to speak.
And Major had the opportunity to act opposite Layla Felder, who is outstanding as Shannon, and Barquad Abdi. Outstanding performances as the sort of the moral compass of the film. They seem to always point to true north. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on that pairing, and how that process worked for you playing Tyson?
Well, I'm still good friends with Layla Felder. She was fantastic. Well, as Kim mentioned before, when you're working with these actors who know how to just become a character, it all just came so naturally. Barkhad Abdi, of course, I believe he was Oscar nominated, right?
That's right.
And you could just tell. I mean, he was an absolute joy to work with, just a cool guy. And in those scenes with him, it felt like, this man, this incredibly generous guy is just genuinely supportive of this kid, of Tyson. And that just helped it come along so naturally. There was a point when I stopped acting, and it was just Tyson's there talking to Aklilu, and getting that support. So yeah, just amazing actors all around.
And Layla is an up-and-coming actress. She certainly had a very good screen presence. She, as the counter to your classmates, she's the great example of what young people should be. Mm-hmm. My daughters even said she's the Girl Scout.
Doing the right thing. That's right.
Yeah. So they really enjoyed that. Kim, as you mentioned, Barquad is an Oscar-nominated actor, a great representative of the Somali American community in Minnesota. How did you attract him to this project and bring him in as this internationally renowned marathon runner?
Well, the casting director, Lisa Hamill, she always has sort of one credo she goes by when it comes to casting, which is it's all about the material. If you put material in front of an actor that they can respond to and feel that they can bring something to that character, then it's a challenge for them, and they want to step up to that challenge and play that role. So the reality is it was as simple as we think he'd be right for the picture. and his representatives were contacted, and we wwere told them what the project was about. They said send the script and an offer, and Barkhad read the script, and we had a conversation, telephone conversation, and he said he would love to play the role, and it was pretty much as simple as that.
Rest is history.
It was really a great screen chemistry between the mentor and the student, as it were. It was really well done. And speaking of those scenes, did you practice at all? Were you in training to run for the filming?
Oh, yeah. I was, if I'm honest, a little pudgy before I started working to get in shape for Tyson. I didn't run. The most I ever would do would maybe be to ride a bike to a friend's house and then back. So it was certainly a lot of just grueling training over and over at the local school. They had a huge parking lot. And so my mom, my brother, we would all go there, park the car, and just time lapse. 1 lap, 2 lap, 3 lap. And it was just a lot of preparation. And in the end, filming in the summer heat in Atlanta, with the humidity, it was very worth the effort to have practiced beforehand. Because if I didn't, I don't think the movie would have been finished ever.
Major, do you feel a responsibility as a person on the spectrum playing Tyson?
I feel like it's a responsibility to play him well. To, as we've become more diverse over the years, with the internet and whatnot, it's become easier and easier to find people who, fit requirements, so to speak. Like before the 2000s, before then, you didn't really have actors, who were on the spectrum playing characters who are on the spectrum. So nowadays, there's really not an excuse. It's if a character needs representation by somebody who is, fitting for the part, you have to go for it. The same thing applies to voiceovers, right? If you have people of color as a character, you got to find somebody who is a person of color. It's just representation. So yeah, I do think it's a responsibility to play it well and match, like I said, those requirements. We're in the age where it's a thing that just has to happen. People are much more inclusive now.
Kim, you've worked in Hollywood enough to see this change that Major's discussing. How important is it to you that we're seeing more diversity in casting? And as a writer-director, how valuable is that to you as a creative artist?
It's incredibly valuable, and I believe it's necessary. I grew up at a time where people really had no business playing certain roles. And even as a young boy, I was offended by lots of things that I saw. I saw blackface. I saw actors trying to be, Mongolian leaders or
John Wayne.
Yeah, or you get, Mickey Rooney, who I believe was a very talented actor.
God, yeah.
But putting the buck teeth in and squinting his eyes and playing a Japanese man, I think that was distasteful and off color, if you will allow that phrase. So for me, as a creative, you want authenticity, and so you need to cast the right people to play roles. It's not a matter of, well, this actor is famous and therefore, they can be any character from history or just, put some paint on their face and they can be anything they want. I don't think that that's the right path for, number one, for an organic situation, and certainly not for any authenticity. So it was important to me. We have to open up casting. You can't hold people back. People are allowed to to be cast, or at least to audition for all kinds of roles. And in the case of Tyson's Run, if I'm not mistaken, we auditioned something like 262 young men to play Tyson. And some, I suppose, were on the spectrum and some were not. And I can tell you some of it was comical. So we had some actors who came in and tried to give you their version of someone who might be living with autism. And it went to the level of ridiculousness. But when I was brought in to take a look at some of the selects, I got a phone call from casting director, and I was told, you really got to see this young man. And the wonderful thing is that I wasn't told that Major was on the spectrum. I was just said, just come and watch his audition. And I don't know if I ever told you this, Major, but it was very clear from the first 5, 6, 7 minutes that you were Tyson. There were no other choices, really. And
I appreciate it.
And then found out later that you were actually on the spectrum. And so that was sort of the cherry on top of the sundae at that point.
Right.
Without giving away, a lot of the film or its overarching nature, this is a family. This is about family. This is a film about rebuilding connections, repairing past choices. I mentioned to Major, and obviously my listeners and readers know, I am at home. I am homeschooling my daughters right now through COVID. My wife is out of town right now. As a father, people look at me and say, wait, you're doing the homeschooling? You've chosen to do something different? In this film, one of the things my daughters noticed, and they really picked up on this, was Coach Hollerman gives up his career and says family comes first.
That's right.
That is a very powerful message. And can you comment on why that message was so important to put into a feature film?
Well, I think that every family has its challenges, of course. There are no perfect families. But in this particular case, Coach Hollerman, he has to realize that as much as he believes he has been there, just providing a roof and providing food on the table and clothing on his son's back doesn't mean he's giving his son what is really necessary. So it had been years and years and years building up of, ultimately in his mind, I'm sure, some sort of neglect. And we don't want to give away, as you said, the picture. We want the folks to enjoy it, but obviously there's a turning point. There's some sort of trigger that makes it very clear that he has to do more. He has to do better. And I'd like to share this with you, and Major's heard this before, but we did a test screening of the film in Texas, in Houston. And after the screening, there was a father who had come with his daughter. And his daughter had her challenges. Let's just leave it at that. And he walked out of the theater and sort of ushered his daughter into the ladies' room. And she was about 14, maybe 15 years of age, I would guess. And then he turned and came to me, recognizing me as the writer-director because I'd been on stage talking about the picture. And he thanked me. He wanted to shake my hand because he said the film made him realize that he needed to be a better father to his daughter. And he thanked me and he hugged me, and with tears running down his face that ultimately got on my jacket, He thanked me again. His daughter came out of the ladies' room. He put his arm around her and they walked out of the theater. And that made the whole picture and the making of the picture, worth it. If even one father or one family maybe found a little bit of healing from having seen that picture, that's magic to me.
And Major, how's that make you feel to know that this film is already touching lives?
Like I said before, it just feels amazing. It's what I ultimately hoped would come out of it, what people would take away from it. Hearing that just makes me feel fluttery inside. Let's say that. Makes me very, very happy.
I really am looking forward to more of your work in the future, Major.
Me too.
It's exciting to see someone on the spectrum who openly identifies and is doing well and is spreading a positive message and being a positive example. As we talked about, so many of the autistics even today are portrayed by non-autistic actors.
Right.
And so I personally thank you as an autistic parent and on behalf of my autistic daughters for doing this. I think you did a fantastic job and our entire family enjoyed it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Kim, you are involved in other positive, family-friendly message movies. You have a project coming up that's family-friendly. What attracted you to this idea of making family movies in an era when everyone wants R-rated blockbusters? What attracted you to these message movies?
Well, the reality is, I like a good story. So I wouldn't want folks to get the false impression that the only types of stories I tell are these family sort of oriented films. But look, the fabric of society is family. And I think even in an R-rated action picture, you can have great family values. And I think that for me, it's always about the story and about the characters. And if it's sort of a strong family nucleus that we're dealing with, then that's the story that I tell. But I think you can get in a $200 million blockbuster film that has lots of visual effects and lots of special effects. You can also make that something that families can understand, because it's really about human interactions. As a matter of fact, you brought up that a picture that I'm developing right now is, essentially a faith-based film, but it's really a story about a woman who has unshakable faith and is trying to save her church. And that's, based on, a true story. So what I was attracted to is the journey that this particular character would go through. But at the same time, shockingly so, I'm developing a campy horror thriller that is very funny. Called A Lawyer, the Devil, Three Priests, and a Nun. But it also is a picture that has inclusion, diversity, and it has some degree of violence, but it makes sense in the context that story is being told. And I think a lot of people will walk away from that picture as well, thinking, there's something to being open-minded about others who are different. So, I'm attracted to good stories. I grew up in a great family, but certainly not perfect. Every family has its issues, as I'd like to say, but sometimes you just have to make adjustments. And if you make the adjustments collectively, it's better for everyone within the family.
Well, our family appreciated this film, Tyson's Run, which will open nationally March 4th.
That's correct, March 4th.
March 4th, 2022, in theaters, probably on 500 screens. You will be able to find it. If you're looking for it, you'll be able to find it. I will include links to Tyson's Run in the podcast notes, as well as links to other resources relating to this and other projects that Kim Bass and Major Dodson have worked on. I want to thank them for joining me on the Autistic Me podcast. Again, it's been an honor. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is all mine.
And thank you, Major.
Thank you, sir, very much.